How does a tax deed sale work in Florida? Welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to answer your question, how does a tax deed sale work in Florida? Well, first of all, a tax deed sale is really a tax defaulted auction. That means there's going to be an auction. So I'm Ted Thomas, and I've been involved with tax deed sales or tax auctions for the last 30 years. I started out as an investor, and then I became a guide and a coach, and then I started teaching people and showing people how to do it. So I've been an investor for many years, and this is a good way to make money. I transferred from other parts of real estate, but it always makes money. Now, if you're seeing a little hole on the top of my head, I'm having a lot of cancer surgery done on my face because when I grew up and for many years, I've been a sun worshiper, and I've always been out in the sun, so I got too much sun. Plus, my first career was as a pilot, and as you probably know, when you look at a cockpit on an airplane, it's all glass, so I had a little bit too much sun. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, this episode is going to answer your question, how does a tax deed sale work in Florida? All right, now this is a large market. Okay, now this episode is going to show you how to make money with these, and it's going to show you the step-by-step process. Now this is really a public auction, and in many cases, the tax auction is on the courthouse steps. Now people call it a tax deed sale, but it's really a tax deed auction. So all of the counties in Florida, all 67 counties, can sell tax defaulted property. So that means if you go to the big counties, they'll have a lot. If you go to the small counties, when I say big, I mean big in population. If you go to a large population county, they'll have a lot of tax deeds available, 100, 200. If you go to the small population counties, they'll still have quite a few, but probably more in the neighborhood of 20 to 50 of those properties. Now, all these properties are sold basically for very close to the back taxes. All right, now those back taxes might be significant in the terms of thousands of dollars, but at auctions, you'll see these properties being sold for very close to back taxes. However, the back taxes might be quite a bit of money. So you'll see tax auctions where people buy property for $2,000 and $5,000. You'll also see where the bidding goes up to thousands of dollars. By that I mean hundreds of thousands of dollars. So stay tuned. I'll come right back. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about tax deed sales and how they work in Florida. Now, this is really a step-by-step process. The legislature decided how they wanted to sell these properties. Then the county executes what the legislature wants them to do. So as I say, it's a step-by-step process. And before the property ever is at auction, it's gone through many, many steps of what's called due process. And that means that the county treasurer, the county people are going to send many notices of default. Now, when they send the notice of default, that tells the property owner that there's consequences for not paying tax. Now, the first consequence there is they're going to have to pay a late fee. But the second consequence is much worse. The property is going to be lost to the county. By that I mean the county is authorized to confiscate the property. And if they confiscate the property, what they're going to do is they'll evict the tenants or the homeowner or who's ever there, and then they'll resell that property back into the marketplace, and they sell it at very low prices. All right, so the tax collector, basically the treasurer, is authorized to confiscate the property, then to resell it at auction and use that money to pay the property taxes. All right, now this is not an unusual process. It's step by step. If the property owner ignores the notices of default, they're doing it at their own peril because the tax collector will take the property. When I say take the property, they're going to confiscate it, they're going to seize it, and they're going to sell it at a public auction, and the bidding is going to start at back taxes. Okay, so this doesn't mean that the property is bad. It just means someone didn't pay the taxes on it. Now, what does the county want out of this deal? I can assure you the county doesn't want the property. They don't want the property. It's a big headache for them. What they really want is they want the revenue that that property produces. Now, what kind of revenue does a property produce? It produces tax revenue. So when it goes into default, they take it off of the roll of taxpayers. All right, the county wants properties on the tax roll. All right, the tax roll represents responsible homeowners or property owners that pay their taxes and keep them current. In other words, they pay them and they continue to pay them. All right, Now, why does the county care about all that? The county has a major problem on the hands. What's their problem? The county's problem is this. If they can't collect tax, how are they going to pay the county employees? How are they going to pay for the police department? Who's going to pay the firefighters? What about building the schools and the school teachers? So the county has lots and lots of bills, okay? Now, if someone defaults on their taxes, number one, they go off the tax roll. Number two, the county doesn't have money. So the county is going to take action. I can assure you, if the property owner doesn't pay, something will happen before that year is out. Now, the county wants all the properties on the tax roll. They want everybody paying so that they have money to take care of all the county bills. Now, I didn't make these rules. All the rules were made by the Florida legislature. All right. Now, the legislature, that's the lawmakers. They pass the rules down to the county. Then the local county, they're the ones that are going to execute all this. Now, the property tax, if it isn't paid, it simply means that the county is going to evict who's ever on the property, and they're going to move them out of there, and they're going to sell that property at auction. All right, that's called a tax defaulted auction. More common people are going to call it, how does a tax deed sale work in Florida? Well, a tax deed sale is nothing more than an auction conducted by the county treasurer. All right, now let's talk about some of these counties. So let's take a place like Miami-Dade. Well, you could expect to find 100, even 200 properties at that auction. Now, some of them will be junk, but they'll be probably selling for $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. They'll be probably selling it in Miami-Dade for $200,000 and $300,000, but they might be worth $500,000 or more. Now, a place like Miami-Dade, that's a populous county, so they might have 2 auctions a year. But let's look at the smaller counties. Small county, by that I mean small in terms of population. They've got a low population, so they might only have 40 or 50 properties a year. Let's take Orange County. Orange County is right in the middle of the state, and that's Orlando. So in Orlando and Orange County, they have an auction every week or every 2 weeks, but they only auction off 5 or 10 properties. So they just keep up with it. As they get the defaults, they go ahead and keep up with it. So in Orlando, you might see maybe 10 or 20 in a month, but it'll be a couple of different auctions. It'll be conducted in the treasurer's office. They all just walk in the office and they talk about it, and that's how they sell it. At Miami, there'll be 200 to 500 people in the room. So you're getting the idea. So low population counties, not a lot of properties. Large population county, 200, 300, maybe even more. I've been to places like Los Angeles where there's 2,500 properties from that one county. Now think about that. Now, how do you know about these auctions? Well, it's simple to know about them. The auctions are advertised. They're announced in the newspaper. So when the government says they're going to announce it, they announce it in the newspaper. Now they're going to advertise in the newspaper. They also advertise it on the county website. So you're going to be able to find out those auctions. You just have to keep track of it. All right, now, a lot of mistakes at auctions. I mean, this is big time mistakes. Now, I've been helping people avoid mistakes at auctions for years, but I'm always surprised at what happens at these auctions. Now, for some reason, people see the word auction and they think that means bargain. Well, folks, the bargain goes away very quickly when someone overbids. They push the bidding up and up, all right? Now, do people do that? All the time. I see people, they bid at the auction, and they'll bid the price over the retail value. In other words, it could have gone to a broker and bought it for less money. But the point is, they haven't looked at the property. They don't know what they're bidding on. So one of the big mistakes people make is they don't look at the property. That's a disaster. What if the place had burned down? What if there was a hurricane? What if there was a flood? What if it was next to a chicken farm? Imagine what a chicken farm smells like in one of those big chicken barns that's sitting out there in the baking sun in the summertime. Okay, so a bargain doesn't take place at every auction because some people overbid. Now, I can't tell all the people what to do, and a lot of people don't get educated. They just think they're going to go and they can do anything they want. All right, county auctions have been going on for 200 years. They sell tax lien certificates. They sell tax defaulted properties, which is what we're talking about today. The untrained buyers, I can't tell you how many mistakes they make. It's just unbelievable. So you need to learn how to bid at the auction. Now, if you didn't do anything else, you should go to a few auctions and watch and see what takes place. I have watched people purchase property that's been completely burned down. Now think about that. All there is a foundation with a bunch of rubble, and people are bidding as if there was a house. I've watched people bid when the property's in the bottom of a lake, but it was outlined as a property, and they're bidding on the bottom of a lake. Now, I don't know why they would do that, except they're uneducated buyers, so you don't want to be that person. You need to get trained yourself, but you don't want to go to these auctions and not know what you're doing. You don't want to be paying retail because you're not going to be able to sell it. So what's the question I'm answering today? The question simply was, how does a tax deed sale work? Well, here's how it works. It's really a simple process. First of all, the government is going to confiscate the property. Once they have confiscated the property, the treasurer will announce that they're going to have an auction. That will be done in the newspaper, and it will be done on the website. All right, now, let's use a relatively small county, small in terms of population. The auction is going to take place. The county official, probably a woman, will walk out to the county courthouse steps, and on the courthouse steps, she'll announce, I'm going to have an auction, I'm going to sell properties. And if there's someone standing there to listen to her, that person gets to bid. If there's 100 people, they all get to bid if they want. All right, and she will announce the property by reading off the property number. In other words, the parcel number, the folio number, the tax number. She will read it off. Anybody that wants to bid can raise their hand and bid. Or if they have bidder's cards, you will have purchased a bidder, you will have registered and had a bidder's card, and you bid with that number. And she will say going once, going twice, whatever. All right, it's as simple as that. There's no drama, there's no yelling and screaming, but there will be her saying going once, going twice, going 3 times. It's not a loud affair. There might be 2 or 3 bids take place, and she'll pick the highest one, and she'll ask if there's higher. All right, that process goes on till that property is sold, and then she'll start another one. If she starts another one and no one wants to bid, she'll just put that aside and start with the next number. All right, the point is, it's not craziness. It's very simple. Anybody can do it. The county government employee, she's just working, trying to get rid of the property, get it back out into the market. Now, in the populated counties where there's a lot of people, there could be some yelling and screaming. The auctioneers will be yelling and screaming. What do? They want to hype it and get the price up. Auctioneers will get the price up because they get a commission on every sale. Okay, they're gonna get paid on the price that thing sells for. So the smaller auctions will more than likely be a county employee. Now, at the bigger auction, they're now hiring auctioneers, but that doesn't mean a county employee that she could come out there and she could auction the property. She's a government official. She's working in official capacity, and she needs to be respected. And if you don't respect her, you'll be removed from the auction because the sheriff will remove you, that's for sure. All right, so all she's going to do is read off a parcel number. You can raise your hand and bid if you want. If you don't want to bid, you can just observe what other people do. As I said, it's quiet. It's not a lot of fuss. It moves along very, very quickly. She'll say going once, going twice, going 3 times, sold. There's no argument after that. Some guys say, oh, I want to bid more. Too late. When she says sold, that means just exactly that. The property is sold. Now, this is a proven process. This process has been around for 200 years. Now, I'm going to tell you, the auction buyers keep their mouth shut. They don't talk to anybody. They watch what's going on in that auction. That's what you want to be. You want to be quiet, watch what's going on. You don't want to be involved in any of the drama that might be going on in that place. I can tell you, I personally have bought properties worth $400,000 for 20 and 30 cents on the dollar. I've bought properties worth $500,000 for 30 cents on the dollar. This process works, and it will work for you. Now, don't worry about the numbers I've just stated. There will be, the majority of the properties will be between $50,000 and $100,000 in value. You can buy those for 10 cents, 20 cents, and 30 cents on the dollar. You will see people bid them all the way up to retail. I don't know why they do that. They're uneducated. It takes 2 or 3 years to learn how to do auctions, or go to somebody's class like mine or anybody else's. Learn how to do it. Don't be an overbidder at those auctions. All right, now I'm ready to button this up, so I'm going to do a couple of questions, and I'll do those now. Does Florida have enough tax lien certificates? Well, today I was talking about tax deeds, but in the tax lien certificate market, All 67 counties will have approximately 1 million tax certificates available every year. They usually sell those in May and June, but there's always plenty of leftovers you can get after May and June. The point is, there's 1 million certificates. That's enough for everybody, that's for sure. The auctions, online or offline? Okay, they're in both. They could be offline in person, and they can be online. So you can do both, and you can choose. So someplace you can do actually both at the same time. So it's going to be up to the county what they want to do, and you'll just have to kind of follow the rules as the way they want to do it. All right, so I'm finishing up now, and here's what I want to make sure. I always promise people I'll tell you about 2 mistakes people make at the auction. First mistake they make at the auction is this. They don't look at the property. So if you haven't had eyes and boots on the ground and you haven't seen that property, or you don't have somebody you know looking at that property, I'm going to tell you not to buy it. What if it burned down? What if there was a hurricane? What if there was a fire? What if there was a windstorm? I mean, any kind of crisis could happen to that property. And then you'll be buying that burned out Hulk. You really don't want to do that. The other big mistake people make is they get to the auction and they get too excited. And they get excited and they get into that bidding stuff and they start bidding, and they're bidding to win. You don't need a bid to win. Anybody can bid high and win. You bid so you get to your objective of getting a property cheap. All right, now you don't want to bid on a property until you know what you can sell it for. All right, now that's called an exit strategy. If you don't have an exit strategy, don't bid on the property. All right, well, thanks for watching. Below me is a free gift for all of you that stayed with me. I hope you learned a lot today. I'll be back on the next video.